All right, I guess we'll officially start. Let's see. First things first, this is being recorded, so just so that you are aware. Notice that this is not Renee. This is Greg Weinheimer, who's going to talk about the Data Migrator product that we have. On your screen, you should see just the housekeeping stuff. This is all pretty standard. Nothing's really changed. All right, if you have any questions, ask them anytime through the Q&A, or you can also put them in the chat. All right. So without, want to say something, Greg?
Oh no, I'll just introduce myself when I get started, I guess,
Okay.
in a few minutes, a little while.
All right, so I'm going to talk about profiles. So profiles are procedures that you have in your environment that basically runs any folk exec, any procedure code that you can think of. So whether it's a table file or you're doing file defs, dynamics, depending on what platform you're on, setting variables, all of this is done automatically in profiles, and we're going to talk about which ones you have available, when they run, and possible uses for them. All right, disclaimer stuff. All right, so the types of profiles. So the first one that we encounter is the server profile. This is in the WebFOCUS world, the edasprof.prf, and in the mainframe world, in mainframe focus, and this is for version 7.7 and higher, there's an errors.prf dataset, which will have the edasprof member in it. For versions prior to 7.7 on mainframe focus, you're going to have it in your errors.data or in a concatenated data set to errors.data. The next one you have is the group. The group would be your group name. So if you have a security group or something associated with a group of people, then you can set up a group profile, which would have the group name.prf. And again, this is going to be in the errors.prf. User, username.prf is specific to a user. Application, this is a little strange one because this is run whenever you run a procedure in an application. And I'll explain more about what the details are for that. And then lastly, the one we're going to go into most detail about is the MFD profile. And this is based on a synonym. So anytime you access a synonym, then the MFD profile will kick in. So let's talk about what each one of these is doing. So the server will run, the edasprof will run every time an agent starts or a task starts. For you focus people, it's going to run when the session starts because you can think of the session just as a single agent, single task. Every time edasprof is called, it's basically reinitialized. So if you have global variables that you're setting, once you rerun the edasprof, they're not set anymore. So there's no memory there, and that's because WebFOCUS is a non-persistent connection. So the edasprof, the server profile, should be used to set the default environment for everybody, no matter what group they're in, no matter what they're doing. This is going to be the overriding factor. The group also runs when the agent and task starts, but it's going to run after the server profile. So there's an order. And this should be used to set common environment variables for the group or set a common environment for the group. Again, you can do anything you can do in a procedure. The most prominent ones are to set the app path because you might not want to have people in one group being able to see the apps from other groups. The user runs after the group name, after the group profile. And this is where you can even more fine tune what the environment is for a particular user. So the application profile is in, and it's only, let's see, The application profile is only run when you run a procedure from the console. And by running a procedure from the console, so you're in the WebFOCUS reporting server console, you're looking at your procedures, and you have to right-click and select Run or Run Advanced in order for the profile to take effect. If you open the procedure and click the Run button from the editor, that will not invoke the profile. So I always thought it should, and so I would do that and expect my profile to run, and it never did. And then we found out that the rule is you have to physically run it from the run option by right-clicking the procedure and selecting Run or Run Advanced. So in this case, there's going to be a physical file in your app directory called profile, which you're probably not going to see if you have it. And in the options for the WebFOCUS reporting console, there's a check that you can do to say show profile. All right, so now we're going to jump into the MFD profile. So the MFD profile will run with each invocation of anything that accesses a file, table, table F, graph, match file. The list goes on and on. Multiple MFD profiles may be executed. So when would be a case when you would access more than one synonym at a time? Well, in a join, in a match, in a more. So what can you do with MFD profile? Just like any other profile, anything that you can do in a procedure, you can do in a profile. So since this is file specific, most of the uses for this are to file def allocate files. So maybe you want one person to look at the production version all the time, but you might have a developer that you might want them to look at the development version. If you have DBA, if you're using DBA, you can set the user for the DBA processing. This way, you're only setting it when you're actually accessing the file. Turning filters on and off. So these are the focus filters which I think we went over at one point, but it might be good to revisit at some point next year. But filters is just a shortcut of doing where conditions. And then setting global variables that you might be using in the synonym master. So if you have global variables in your master, maybe for an access file, you might have a table name, then you can set them in your MFD profile. Do you have to? No, you could set them yourself prior. But if you do have an MFD profile, it will take effect because there's no way for anyone to undo what the MFD profile is doing. So you access the file, that MFD profile is run. If you say you're allocating file A, and then somebody before they do a table file car allocates file B, well, too bad, because your MFD profile said you're allocating A, and it's going to take effect. So in your synonym, you're going to add a parameter at the file level, MFD underscore profile equals, and then the name of the procedure that you want to run. Things to look out for. Looping. So if you reference your synonym, your master, inside of the MFD profile procedure, it's going to then call the MFD profile procedure again. So, and so on and so on. So we show one example of how to work around that. All right. So either don't self-reference or add code to prevent the looping. So here's a sample master synonym. So we have group policy, suffix equals SQL Aura, and MFD equals grppol. Notice we have a variable name called LTD, and it's defaulted to LTD or ETD. And then we're using that as the title for the long-term variable or field name. In the MFD profile, grppol, we're doing a dash set amper LTD, and if the team name, another variable, team name, equals GM, then it's extended term, otherwise it's going to be long term. So even though I have default LT or ETD, then because of the MFD profile, it will never be that. It will either be extended or long-term because of the if-then-else condition. Here we have a filter, filter select groups equals. If the group code team RESP, otherwise 2. So if that equals 0, then 1 else is 0. Notice we have an MFD profile still called grp_pol, but in this time we're adding a file def. So we're saying file def team RESP is going to point to file C user app team RESP.dat. So if I do a check file, my file hold, table file hold, and then print field name. If my file has an MFD profile, here I have dash default amper MFD rep equals 0, set amper MFD rep equals MFD rep plus 1. So I'm doing some type of iteration here. So this is an example of what you can do to avoid getting into the loop situation. So if it's the first time, MFD rep has a value of 1. So it's going to run the check file and create the hold file. Otherwise, if it's greater than 1, we're just going to jump to no more. So the MFD profile is always going to be run, but whether you reference stuff inside of it is up to you with the looping. Okay, any questions on that? Let me stop sharing. All right, I've got some questions out here. It looks like, how is a session started? Pretty much anything you do in the WebFOCUS world will start a session. So if you refresh your screen, if you do a refresh on your app directory, that is technically a session happening behind the scenes. But pretty much anytime you run a procedure, you're going to start a new session. In the focus world, doesn't a DD allocation outweigh the data set file name in the master that would do an allocation? In the focus world, doesn't a DD? That's true for profile Lori, but I'm not sure if it's true for any of the others because everything's being, the EDA SPROF and the user profiles and the group profiles are being looked for in a specific place. Profile, I think it's hard coded to look and see, do I have a DD for profile? And if I do, then run that one. Okay, Dan, not a question, but define file also invokes MFD profiles. Okay, good point. Anything that references a synonym will invoke the MFD profile. All right. Mr. Coleman, does going from one portal to another cause a session then? I don't understand that question. So if you have a hub sub and you're going from one server to another, then you're going to start, when you run it, you're going to start a new session on the one server, plus you're going to start another session on the sub or the hub, whatever the calling server. So hopefully that's what you were asking. All right. All right. So Greg, if you want to take it away and you got extra time if you need it.
Great. Okay. Let me.
Is dash exit appropriate to use in an MFD? Oh, sorry, they got more questions.
No, go ahead.
In an MFD profile, does it cause an exit when issued? So the dash exit in the MFD profile should just exit out of the current MFD profile procedure. But I'm going to test that. Do you have to mark any of the data from the legacy applications that you're going to need in your integration? Do you have to mark any of the data from the legacy application that you are going you need in your integration? And if so, not quite sure I understand what you're asking for, Joey. So if you want to follow up, if you can put this on the survey, then I can go ahead and look at it from there. Okay, and let me just add copy. I'm putting a link in the chat. And this link is for a survey about Summit, because we'd like to know your thoughts on Summit. And basically, it's going to ask things like, do you want just a multi-day summit, or do you like the way we did things this past year, where we had individual one-day summits? So we're trying to, the marketing group is trying to decide, what do you all want, so we can accommodate your wishes as best we can. So we tried something new with the roadshows, and there's been feedback that people want to go back to the single summit, but we just want to know what the real feeling is out there. So if you could take the time and click the link and fill out the form, we would appreciate it. Filled the summit thing in before. Should we do a second one? No, if you've done it, you only need to do it once. All right, go ahead, Greg. Sorry.
All righty. Okay, I'm Greg Weinheimer. I'm the product manager of Data Migrator right now, and my background is I've been with IBI a long time. It's actually just over 30 years now, and I noticed a few people I know on this call, and I was in professional services for most of that time, so I've worked with several of you. What I want to do today is I was asked to talk about Data Migrator some, because I don't think it gets a lot of playtime on some of our Focus Friday or any of our other times when we're like going over our tool sets. So what I want to do is kind of give an overview of Data Migrator, and we'll kind of go from here. It's a standard disclaimer. Data Migrator. What is Data Migrator? As those of you who have used it, and again, I know there's a few of you on this call that have, it's an ETL tool. It extracts data from pretty much any data source, especially when you're talking IBI. We have lots of adapters. Generates SQL, allows you to transform that data in several different places, either in the source, in the SQL itself, or in the target. And then it loads that data into a myriad of different databases and data sources, relational databases, columnar databases, XML files, REST. You can write a Data Migrator flow to load through a REST adapter. Primary use cases. Let's see, primary use cases for Data Migrator, creating data marts and data warehouses. It's with our adapters, we can get data from multiple places and move it into a single data warehouse or data mart or data marts or what have you. Staging for analytics and BI, which is kind of why we're a good fit with WebFOCUS, is that we can use Data Migrator to create staging areas or databases to stage data for analytics and such. Conversions and migrations. On a couple of you people that I've seen on this call, I've worked on you to actually migrate data from old applications to new applications, and then scheduled flows to keep that data fresh, through ongoing parallel operations. I'm sorry, my voice is cracking, and I have absolutely no idea why. I actually brought it up with Walter today. I was like, my voice was fine yesterday. Now today it sounds like I have a cold. Architecture. All right. Okay. Components in the Data Migrator architecture is the Data Migrator server. It's the central component. Orchestrates the migration process, manages jobs, distributes requests, handles joins, transformations, oversees the flows of data between the sources and targets. Source adapters. The adapters are responsible for being used during the extract of the data from various systems. Get data from files, cloud platforms, social media, flat files, what have you. Passes the data to the Data Migrator engine for further processing and transformation. Target adapters, components, they reside on the Data Migrator server and facilitate loading of the transform data into the destination systems. Data management web console. I put those together. Basically, you can either use the web console or DMC, the Data Migrator console, to build your flows. The functionality, the gap is closing. Web console was kind of behind. There was certain functionality you could not do that existed in the DMC. There's still a few things, some of which in my mind are irrelevant, but 99% of what you would do from DMC, you can now do from the web console. So the web console and DMC, those are the development tools. Those are the tools you use to actually create your data flows. Data flow, right here, and that represents the actual movement of the data from the source to the target. Along with that, you also have the ability to schedule flows. Data Migrator has a built-in scheduler. I'll talk about that a little bit later. And there's built-in logs and error handling. So we have logs that, again, some of you have used Data Migrator, so you know. The logs are pretty standard. I think they're pretty easy to read. You also have the ability to embed tracing, just like you do with WebFOCUS, to get more information about issues and such. All right, so so this actually is kind of a list of what I just talked about, the components that make up the Data Migrator, the tool. Data Migrator, scalable across server platforms. So just like WebFOCUS, Data Migrator runs on various operating systems, Windows, many Linux environments. We're just going to state one because there's so many, it's hard to just list them. UX, different flavors of UX, and ZOS, including USS. Relational databases. This is a list of just some of the relational databases we support, some of the more popular ones. Oracle, Informix, Sybase, Postgres, Postgres, DB2, Greenplum, okay, and several others. We also can read to and write to, read from, write to different files and cloud-based databases and social media. Notice Snowflake on there, Hive, Hadoop. One of the things that we're working on right now is Databricks. We're targeting getting Databricks adapter out there. I maybe should not have said that, but don't tell my boss. Oh, shoot. Walter knows my boss really well. Don't tell my boss. Okay, synonyms. Okay, now I want to get into just building, using the tools to build a flow. So from Data Migrator, and most of the screenshots I here is from the web console, since you can pretty much do everything from the web console now that you can do from DMC.
Greg?
Yes, sir.
Before you jump in, there's a question. We're starting a journey with Snowflake data warehousing. Can Data Migrator do incremental loading and full load?
Yes, we definitely can do incremental loading. You're talking like change data capture kind of thing, or
Well, no, I think I'm thinking they're asking when you start out, then you're going to do a full load, but
Oh,
then
absolutely. Yeah.
you might only want to add daily from that point forward.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's why I was thinking change data capture. I was thinking you would do an initial load, and then based on whatever from your source systems, you would decide what has to go into the nightly or hourly or whatever half
Okay.
hourly loads that you want to do. But absolutely, and it would depend on your source systems and how we would do it, or source databases. Um, because we'll leverage whatever that database has, like DB2, Oracle, SQL Server. They all have built-in change data capture functionality, ability to read directly from the logs. So that's probably the way we would want to do it from those systems, and we'd have other ways depending on what the system is. Hope that helps. Okay, so metadata. Oops. All right, metadata. The creation of metadata is a little bit different between the web console and DMC. But any of you who've gone to the reporting server to create metadata understand exactly how to make it. It's you go to get data as opposed to on the DMC, you just right click and tell it to create a synonym on a folder. From the metadata, after you create after you create the synonym, if you open it from the web console, a couple things that you'll notice that are different than what you'll see from DMC is that you'll automatically see a sampling of the data, which can come in handy because it might immediately show you if there's any issues with your data, if there certain things are maybe null where you thought you actually had data and such. And that sample is set to whatever your limit is set. It's configurable within the tool. And there's a couple more questions, maybe. Oh, nope, sorry. Well, anyway, went to the next one. So anyway, sample data, like I said, sample data, you'll do slightly differently from the two tools. DMC, literally right click on the metadata and say sample data, or you can open the master file, right click on the segment and sample it. From the web console, you'll open the data, open the synonym, and it'll automatically sample the data. It'll give you X rows.
Greg,
Sir.
so the question was, why are you in the WebFOCUS reporting server web console instead of the iWay Data Migrator web console?
Because it's basically the same thing. It is the same thing, actually. So the reporting server that you would use for WebFOCUS has Data Migrator basically built into it. So without even having a Data Migrator, the DMC, the actual tool, you can build your flows from the web console directly, the WebFOCUS web console, or you can use the Data Migrator, the DMC, which is the tool that any of you that have used Data Migrator have used for years. And I'll be honest, I love that tool. I think it's really easy to use. So it's actually taken me a little bit of effort to use the web console, but the more I use it, the more I'm starting to like it, because it does do some things a little bit differently. Like at first, I didn't like the fact that you open a synonym and it automatically samples the data, but I actually kind of like it now because it just kind of makes me feel closer to the data. I know that sounds silly, but anyway, sampling data, but again, showing the sample from doing it from the DMC as opposed to the web console. Okay, data profiling. Profile from both tools. Also, like I said, 99% of what you can do from one, you can do from the other. And we have an ongoing project tightening that even more. There's just, I want to say, I think we have a list down to like 12 or 13 things, maybe a little more than that. I'd have to talk to one of the programmers to be sure, that are missing between the two. Okay, so for profiling, you have multiple different profiling reports we can run. There's a statistics report, which will show you statistics about each of the fields in your synonym. Counts, row counts. There's key analysis and time series analysis report. Again, statistics report shows you some simple information, but things that come in handy, like distinct counts. Distinct counts, piece of information that will help you to maybe decide, what did I just do? Okay, that was not intentional. Okay, but distinct counts, a piece of information that you would use to identify maybe start to identify the primary key in your table if your data source maybe doesn't have that information readily available. You can drill through in that particular report. You can drill through one of the pieces of statistical information in there was patterns. So you can drill through to the patterns and then get an example of what the patterns are. Again, that can come in handy if you're talking about cleansing data steps, where you might want to identify how much data is cleansed, what maybe your standard is that you didn't know you had a standard on. Which is if you were to go by percentages, it looks like it's probably this first option, which is the area code embedded into parents. Another key analysis report. The key analysis report, I think, is nice, and because it kind of helps you see relationships kind of between fields, or what impact those fields might have together. For the key analysis report, you decide what data it is you're going to analyze, which fields, and then the report will kind of show you information like distinct values when you're looking at both or multiple of those pieces of information. So you see that, I mean, employee ID, let's say that wasn't distinct, and maybe if you added name, and I know that's a terrible thing to use for a primary key, and I'm not suggesting it, but your employee ID and some other piece of information might give you a distinct piece of information or a distinct record. Okay, data flows. Next thing I wanted to kind of go through is the building of data flows. The first thing we do when we're building a data flow is from either DMC or the web console, is that we'll go to the folder we want to put that flow in, right click it, and basically say new data flow. So what you'll get on the web console is something that looks like this. From the DMC, it actually looks very similar. I have a picture of it. No, I did not in this case. So the first thing you're going to do when you're creating a data flow is going to be to add sources. So from both tools, you can just simply, on the left-hand side, you'll have all of your synonyms and all of your fexes and flows and other things available to you. So you can drag directly from the left side the synonym or synonyms, master or masters you want to use to create your data flow. Both tools, if you pull two pieces of information on the left side of the palette, or two synonyms on the left side of the palette, are going to throw a join object up there for you. And the web console is going to try to decide what that join should be. So if it sees fields that have the same exact name on it, it's going to say, oh, okay, that's probably what you want to join on. It's going to build that join. You can always change it to, if that's incorrect, to whatever it is you really need it to be. Transformations, I'm starting on the same screen for this. So if you, from the palette, if you right click on the SQL object and select edit, it gives you a lot of functionality in there to do with source transformation, selection of fields, and other things. So if we go into editing that object, one of your options from your source fields is the ability to add a source transformation. So along the fields that are in your source, you can add a source transformation you can apply a function, which will bring up a user interface that will allow you to select a myriad of functions. And you guys that know Focus know we got lots of functions to apply to your data. Those of you that like to write your own code, your own defines, There's the advanced expression. The advanced expression will just bring up a palette. It'll let you select functions and such off it, but it gives you a lot more freeform possibilities. You can also create groups, phonetic groupings. You can create a decode, and you can bin the data. Okay. Data flows, joins. Okay, like I said, the join is automatically created, but you can go in that join, open it up, and it will give you the user interface that looks like this. And from there, you can actually change that join to whatever you really wanted it to be. In this case, it found product number and product number and said, hey, I want to join on that. If that's not correct, you just add or remove whatever it is you need to create whatever join you need. In this case, it's an outer joins or inner join. So you're getting only data that matches on both sides. You can change that to a left outer, right outer, or full outer. If you want to, just from here, just by literally clicking on a button. Joins to expressions, so you can build in basically a where test in your join. So if you want just data from one department, but you don't have a way to do that with the join, you can just say where department number equal, and then in the join it will be that department number that you want to join to. You can also do profiling from the join object. So all the same kind of profiling that you could do from the synonyms, you can do from here. The good thing is when you do it after the join, it might show some anomalies that you didn't know about. It might show maybe missing data, where maybe you thought you had a nice clean one-to-one join structure, and it ends up it's not, or something like that. So doing the join from the doing the profiling from the join can give you some additional information. Okay, from the same place, from the SQL object, when you right-click and go into it, you can also do your column selection. So by default on the web console, the web console will select every field from the tables from your source tables. It's configurable, and usually one of the first things I do is turn that off, because I'm used to the DMC, which does not by default give you every field, automatically select every field. So it's just one thing to know. So from here you can oh yeah, there we go. You can I talked about source transformations. Okay, you can add fields, or like I said, add transformations from the source segment. You can, if you want to, you'd be able to remove fields from the query from here, or add a new expression, or basically create a pseudo field on the fly. And also from here, by default, when you create a flow, it's going to create it and give you an order by. You can change that to summary, and you can change it to a group by. So you can change it from summarization to summarization. You would do that all from in that editing the SQL object. Now, also from that same SQL object, you have the ability to create filters. There are simple filters, and let me go back. I have that there. I did not. I thought I had that. Okay, so there's simple filters and there are advanced filters. So a simple filter is going to create something like this. It'll create a user interface where you just fill in some information, or you have a little widget like this that allows you to, in this case, create a range. The advanced filters, if you know the focus language and want to create your own filter, where you know exactly what syntax is you want to use for that filter. And like this, here's the advanced filter. So you just basically fill in what you want that filter to say. SQL generator. So in the background, while you're doing all this stuff, selecting your fields, creating your aggregation, creating your filters, in the background, Data Migrator is generating SQL. So like it says, the interface automatically generates ANSI SQL. For relational sources, that gets translated to dialect specific SQL. And for non-relational sources, it's converted to focus. So you can view that. You can view that by going to the SQL object and just saying SQL statement. You do that, and it's going to show you the SQL that was generated. Targets. So for targets, you create targets, or you can put a target in a flow a couple different ways. You can select an existing target and basically select that from the list of available targets there in your application path, and use that as your target table. Or Data Migrator gives you the ability to create a new target on the fly. So you'd select new target, and then you configure that target to put that data into whatever database it is you're configuring it to, and whatever schema and what have you that you want that table to exist. Target transformations. Target transformations are done in a similar manner, but not quite the same manner across the DMC in the web console. And again, I'm showing a lot more of the web console than DMC, because in most of our classes, older classes or in presentations and such, DMC was pretty much what was shown. And I kind of want people to start seeing that you can do the same things in web console. So from the web console, anyway, you go into what is called the merge editor. So when you go into the merge editor, it puts you in a place where you can create target transformations. Same kind of transformations that you can create by going into target transformations and your target synonym on your data flow in DMC. Ooh. So if you go into merge transformations in the web console, you'll see this. And from here, you can click on your insert expression, update expression, and you can basically create whatever that transformation is in the target. The one thing that's a little bit different in the web console than DMC is you don't see this insert expression and update expression in DMC. You basically, on an update or an insert, that expression is the same. So it gives you a little more flexibility that if for some reason, and I'm sure there's a reason, I can't think of one off the top of my head, if you want to say, hey, if I'm inserting this data, I want to use your birthday. Oh, if I'm updating this data, I want to use your anniversary date. I don't know why you'd want to do something like that. There's probably a reason you'd want to do something similar to that. But you have that functionality a lot more easily. I mean, any of us who have used DMC know we can make it work in DMC. But here, it's going to be a lot simpler to do. Target transformation. This is what the target transformation will look like. You can, from the left-hand side, you can select on a function or select a function, and it'll help you build it, or you can just flat out code it yourself. Okay, data flow load options. The load options look different, but they really aren't. So when you're merging into an existing table, it's going to do, especially if optimize is on, it's going to do a bulk load. And if you selected update existing record and include a new record, it's going to do either a merge if that database supports merge, or it's going to do an upsert if that's what the database supports. Looks a little bit different, but to be honest, this is doing exactly the same thing as this. It says merge into existing. This says, use bulk load to populate stage table and merge into target. They're doing exactly the same thing. Extended bulk load, better through partitioning. Partitioning is a functionality, that's the way to put it, that I want to say was added to the product 5 or 6 years ago. I might be wrong in that. I was actually still in consulting when that or professional services when it happened, because I was the first customer to use it. And what it does is it partitions the data based on an integer, a numeric field in your source data, and will partition that. And the programmer told me the logic he used to do it. I cannot remember exactly what it does, but what I've seen in general is it'll create 3 to 5 bins, because we almost called it binning. I end up calling it partitioning. It'll bin that data into like 3 to 5 groups is normally what I see, and will in parallel extract that data with. It'll dynamically create 3 flows. It'll dynamically create 3 to 5 flows. It'll dynamically pull out 3 extracts, 5 extracts, whatever, and then insert that data or upsert that data into the target database with those parallel flows. In the past, I would do this manually, and now you can do it with a single place. And in the place where the customer side I was using this at, it actually increased our throughput by like it dropped it down to 40% of what it was taking to run flows through when we applied the partitioning. Okay, here's a load of, and this is not complete by any means. This is a load of adapters we have that support bulk load. Informix, MySQL, Oracle, Postgres, Greenplum. I'm already okay. Apache's on there for a second. I was like, I know Apache should be on there. Mongo, and this is not a complete list. It's just one that's some of the more some of those I've been seeing more lately.
Greg, what do the megaphones stand for?
I don't know. I stole this side of it and added these, which is why they are a different size. And I couldn't figure out how to fix the size. So I have no idea what the megaphone's for, but I'll research it and try to figure that out. Okay, target options. You're going to see target options more from the DMC than you're going to from the web console. The web console by default will set optimize on, and once you set optimize on, some of the options you'll see in the load options may disappear. Not a lot of them, just the ones that are irrelevant for it. Like if you put optimize on insert records from memory, probably is never going to happen, because it's going to try to do a bulk load if it can, if this bulk load is supported. I mean, now granted, if it's a database that doesn't support a bulk load, yeah, then you'll see insert and update. That's another thing. Depending on the adapter, you'll see different load options, because they have different things that they can support. So insert update is the least efficient way to load data in Data Migrator. It's going to literally take a row, check to see if that row exists in the target table. So basically select against the target table. Does this exist? No, it doesn't. Oh, I'm going to insert it. So it's going to do basically for every row, it's going to do a couple SQL statements. Insert records from memory. The assumption with insert records from memory is you're not going to update any data. You know your data, you know you're going to basically insert everything. So it's far more efficient than insert update, because it doesn't have to do that, check every row. It's going to assume you know your data well enough, and if you don't and you try to insert duplicate data, you're going to get a bunch of database errors. Bulk load via disk file. This still exists with a couple databases. There are some databases that, for whatever reason, needed to have separate disk files created, that you couldn't just load that data into memory and then load it directly into the database. They had to go to a physical file. I think there are less and less of those. Well, I know there are less and less of those, but this still exists, and we do it for a couple of our adapters because we have to, because we don't have a choice. There's no other way to do it. Extended bulk load utility is the one you want to use if at all possible, because it's going to give you the fastest throughput. it's usually what if you set optimize on, it's going to probably try to use this unless it can do something else like a select based insert. I'll talk about optimize in a second. I'm not there yet. Also, we support within the tool slowly changing dimensions and change data capture. So those of you that want to basically scrape your logs to bypass, I shouldn't say scrape your logs. If you want to use your logging, which is what change data capture usually does, and just use your logs to get that data like almost immediately, it's as near real time as you can get it, then you're going to want to use like change data capture. Optimize load. Okay, well, Data Migrator is, you set optimize on, it's going to try to decide the best way to take that data from the source and put it into your target. Well, one of the things it will do is if your source and target happen to be on the same RDBMS, it's going to basically send either a select or a select based insert or a select based merge, where you select the data, you merge the data or insert the data based on that select statement. That way, there's no network traffic. That request is sent directly to the database. It has all the information it needs and it has all the data it needs right there. So using optimize on especially when you're talking data in the same database is significantly faster than having that data have to make a pull from the from the database to Data Migrator and then bulk load it back down to wherever that database is. It's significantly faster. All right. Let's see, optimize loads, database community. It's what I just insert into or merge. Again, it is by default on the web console. All right, I want to only talk about a couple more things. Process flows and parallel groups. Process flow. What a process flow for Data Migrator is, it's the control language. That might be oversimplifying, but it's what allows you to build process flows. So basically, you will take multiple data flows. You can run them in parallel in a parallel group. You can build your dependencies here. You can break these in like all kinds of crazy directions. You can loop them. There are times you may want to loop it, and then based on a variable, come back and go back to that parallel group and run it where it's running, and you pass in a different variable. And so the process flow is you'll see it when we're talking about the nightly or the nightly processing or processing that you run on a scheduled basis. You might have a single process flow where I don't know, sales data has to be loaded before some other data that has to be loaded before some other data. Well, you can control that flow using a process flow. Scheduler. Okay, I talked about scheduler a little bit, but not much. The scheduler is pretty robust in my mind. You can schedule to the second, to be honest. Okay, sorry about that. But the schedule, you can schedule based on day, on date, on basically start at one time. You can specify an end date for that scheduler, that schedule all kinds of things. The schedule itself is part of it's in the start object in the process flow. But we had a customer a couple years ago who said they have a QA, a test, and a prod environment. They're running exactly the same flows in all three. They have them on they want them on three different schedules. So the fact that the scheduler was part of the flow was causing them problems, because every time they would migrate a flow from one environment to the next, they would have to go in and edit their flow to change the date or change the time it was running. So they asked for a scheduler object, which we now have. So when you go into start, you'll notice here you have source type, which did not exist before. and I'm trying to highlight over it, but obviously I can't. Source type, there's two source types. There's custom, which is the old way of doing it, which is it's part of the flow. And then there's schedule object. So schedule object, which you create just like you would create a data flow. You right click on your folder, say new schedule object, and basically it gives you all of these options. You set all of these options, and then your schedule exists. And then what you do is you go into start and you say, instead of using a schedule or a custom source type, I want to use a schedule object. Use that schedule object, and you just select it. And then all of a sudden that is part of that is used for that flow, and you can use that schedule object for as many flows as you want to. All right, that is it. The only other thing I wanted to go over, these are just off the top. I talked about bulk load, but to me, bulk upsert's a little bit different. We have a lot of adapters that support bulk load, which is bulk insert, but did not yet support bulk upsert. So over the last 2 years, maybe even less than that, we've gone from probably supporting bulk upsert in 3 or 4 databases to this isn't even a complete list. I'd have to check with programming to get the complete list, but this was the list I had as of a month or so ago, and it's growing every day. And if there's any databases on that support upsert or merge that we have an adapter for, that is something that you guys would want us to support bulk upsert for or merge on, just let us know, because we're trying to get all of them that support it. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to do, which is kind of related, but kind of not, because I had mentioned earlier how optimize, when you do an optimize where the data is in the same database, will give you significant improvements in throughput in processing. What I did was I created a couple flows. Let's look at this one first, where I'm taking data. It's not much. It's a couple 100,000 records, I think, a few 100,000. I'm taking that data from Postgres and loading it into a hyperstage table. And if I run that, and actually, is that the way I wanted to run it? Yeah. Okay, it's going to take, took 6 seconds to run. What did that do? I loaded 302,000 rows. If I look at this flow, it's doing it's doing no changes. It's using bulk load to populate the stage table with a merge. I'm sure it says merge in here. Yeah. It's updating existing records, and it's including any new records. So it's doing insert for any new records. So that took 6 seconds, loaded, I don't know, 300,000 records. Now, if I have the basically identical flow, but both of these tables are on the same database, they're both on Hyperstage. And it wouldn't matter if this is Hyperstage or Oracle or SQL Server or what have you, Postgres. It's going to be the same. Okay, I'm going to say submit with email because that's usually the way I always do it. I'm surprised it just did submit. And if we run this, oh, wow, that took less than a second. So in this case, it was only 200,000 records because that source table had less data in it. But usually what we've seen is significant improvements. I mean, 10 times as fast is not unusual. So that is all I have got. So I have to figure out how to stop sharing. What did I do, Walter? Oh, there it is. It's up there.
There you go.
Okay. Did we have any questions? QA. In 9 web console, is it easier specifying who the DM log is emailed to than is currently in version 8? It's about the same. I would like to say it's easier, but what are your specific issues with that? If you could send me a note and let me know specifically what you, because we're constantly looking at improving this tool. So if there are specific things that that I'm not thinking of or unaware of, we can definitely fix that, because I was using DMC back in 8 too also, and I don't know that it has changed considerably from there, from specifying users.
So Mark, if you
Yeah,
could
you
put
still do.
the
Yeah. That's a good one though. Let me uh yeah. You know,
Mark,
I shouldn't answer that question like that, because I'm used to that. I don't even think twice about that anymore. I just do it. So I'll test that to see if that is the case.
and Mark, put it on this survey, the session survey, please.
Yeah, that would be great if you could. But I will test that to see if that's the case still. And actually, I'm going to make a note of this, because I'm at the point where I just automatically do it now. I just assume that I'm going to have that it still needs it. And I've actually burnt myself on a couple of things in the past where I assumed I had to do certain things, and those workarounds were fixed. So there's a possibility that I have not asked the programmer, and because string support, I don't know if you know, now we support strings now with like most of our databases, and we started doing that a few years ago, and I was unaware of it because I wasn't keeping up on my reading, and it was when I was still in professional services, so I was really bad at that. But that has been a godsend for me, because when you have strings, you can use all the focus functions against them. You can't against character or like binary large objects, text, there's text fields. Okay. Yep. Why have at failure and also at completion? Because they're different. Because you may have an overall flow where, let's say you're doing your nightly accounting loads. Your last flow that has run successfully, you want to send out an email saying, hey, nightly finance flows have finished. Well, if it fails, you might want to send out one with the header saying, hey, nightly finance flows have failed. So that is why. And I've done exactly that. Let's see. That's all I see.
And Laurie, why don't you send me an invite for 2 o'clock Eastern time, if that works for you. All right. Thanks, Greg. Good
Thank you,
information.
Walter.
All right, so this I'm going to put in the survey again for the summit. If you have not filled it out, if you've already filled it out, thank you very much. So this concludes the WebFOCUS part of the sessions. I'm going to now talk specifically about mainframe focus and things on the mainframe. So if you're not running mainframe focus or running on a mainframe, you're probably not going to be interested. So I will not be insulted if you leave. Please remember to fill out your session surveys, because we read them and we take the feedback that you provide, and it helps us to build our future sessions. All right, one other word. Next month's session is on December 13th, Friday the 13th. So it's not on the third Friday, it's on the second. And that's because holidays coming up and scheduling. So hopefully we'll see you there. And Greg will be back to talk about other things from the server, right?
Yeah, I've got till Monday to figure out what I'm thinking about talking. I'm thinking about change data capture and slowly changing dimensions, because those are interesting subjects. I just don't know if they're things anyone's interested in. But I'll know by Monday.
Okay, cool. Alrighty. Again, thank you for coming. If you're dropping, and if you're not, we're going to go ahead and get started with the mainframe, which is going away. And it's been going away for the last 20 years.
And we all knew that was not true.
Everybody but the people who said it. Alrighty. All right, so for the mainframe session, I'm going to be talking about the IBIS subsystem and simultaneous usage, or it used to be called the Focus database. In the WebFOCUS world, it's still the FDS, the Focus database. Just make sure I have what I need open. Move that over here. Move that over here. And where did my Q&A go? Okay, that is already open. Okay, good. All right, again, so I'm going to start out talking about the IBIS subsystem, and I'm talking about this first because the SU, the simultaneous usage, needs the subsystem in order to work. And in fact, the IBIS, the subsystem is needed by the SU if you're using HyperFocus, if you're using MSO, IMS BMP, or Site Analyzer Smart Mode. And technically, Site Analyzer Smart Mode is probably more so because it uses the SU. So how do you start the simultaneous, how do you start the subsystem? The subsystem started by JCL that's provided, and in the older versions, it's in WebFoc, not WebFoc, that's an internal name. It's in folkcontrol.data. And there's 5 JCL, well, there's more, but these are the important ones. Subsys CP will copy modules into an authorized APF authorized data set. Subsys IJ is the JCL to start, stop, refresh, restart the subsystem. Subsys NM is a ZAP, so you can change the subsystem name. So we have a lot of people that have more than just IBIS subsystem. Some companies put in an IBIT for a test subsystem. Do you need this? No. Once you have one subsystem, you only really need the one. But because I don't think the subsystem code has really changed in quite a few years. Subsys P is an example of starting the subsystem as a started task. And then in the really old releases, 708R and 709, you had the ability of using either the subsystem or an SVC. And if you go to ZOS 2.5 or higher, you can no longer use the SVC. You have to use the subsystem. So in order to tell the code that you don't want to use the SVC anymore, we have a ZAP that you have to do to change it back. How can you check to see if your subsystem is up and running? So you can run this code in JCL. It's basically just running the subsys I program, and you're going to identify your folklive.load that you're running focus from. And the D subsystem, D IBI prod, D hyperbudget, D MSO just gives you some information. The main one we're going to look at is the D subsystem. And if it's working, you're going to see some information. So here I have the name is IBIS, and then some other pointer information. Notice the first line has IBIS D subsystem. So if I go to the previous screen, I said D subsystem. So this procedure will prefix each command with the name of the subsystem, in this case, IBIS. I went ahead and said, well, somebody's probably going to ask, how do I know if it's not working? You're showing me how I can tell that it's working. Well, I used the subsys NM to change the subsystem name to Walt, and I went to run the command to see if the subsystem was up, and I got Walt command invalid. So if the subsystem's not there, it's going to error that the command's invalid on the subsystem name. All right, so that's it basically for the subsystem. Let's see what else about the subsystem. Again, if you're going to ZOS 2.5 and you're running an older version and you're coming from, let's say, ZOS 2.3, 2.4, we do have a fix that you have to apply, which will upgrade the subsystem information because IBM changed the setting, and that setting is allow user key CSA. You used to be able to turn it on, but then IBM made it where you can't anymore. So it has to be off, and we had to accommodate our code to handle that. All the newer versions, I want to say from 7.6.10 and higher, don't need the fix. So simultaneous usage, the SU. So what is it? It's basically a traffic cop. If you have multiple users trying to access databases at the same time, specifically focus databases, but you can use the SU for pretty much anything as long as you have a master. So if you have multiple users trying to access the same database and you want to make sure that one person isn't updating or two people aren't updating the same record at the same time, that's where the SU comes in. Okay. So how do you use the subsystem? So I'm sorry, the simultaneous user. So just like the subsystem can be started as a started task, so can the SU. So you need a configured SU environment. You need to issue a use command inside of your procedure, and you can say use local file as synonym. So without even going through an SU, I can say use car as car1 or use car1 as car. So if I have a focus database and I want to use a master I already have, because I know it's similar, I can just use the use statement, and it's basically a pointer, and or you can think of it as an alias. But if you're using on the SU, then you have to use synonym on and then give it the name of the sync machine that you're going to be calling. If the use goes over one line, you have to end it with the word end. And you have to have a local version of the master synonym, and you have to have a version of the master synonym allocated to the started task. All right, the SU is brought up as a started task via batch, requires the use of the subsystem. There's two files that you're going to add to the started task to bring up the SU, and that's focSU and focusSU. So one is just a data file, the focSU, and the focusSU is a focus file. So if it doesn't already exist, you have to allocate it, and then you have to create it so that it's formatted as a focus database. The SU job has to have both of these, but the job that's calling the SU only needs the focSU. So here's some sample JCL, HLI sync. We have our focSU, our focusSU, HLI print, HLI errors. Those are good to have. This is just going to the JES log. And basically that's going to show you each time a user will access a database, who the user was and what they accessed, when they did an open, when the file was closed. So it kind of gives you a little background. Master, we have HLI.master.data. So that master has to have masters of all the files that it's going to access. So it would have to have, in this case, car. So this single SU is only going to manage the car file. Notice in red, I have the focusctl.data. This is there because there's a master for focus SU, and that happens to reside in the foccontrol.data dataset. Okay, so that's why that's there. In the job that's going to access the sync, we're doing execute program focus, standard JCL, but we have the addition of focSU, which is using the same name as the started task to start the SU. So here I'm doing table file car print country end. Then I'm doing use car on focSU end, and then table file car print country end, and then fin. Notice in my JCL, I do not have a DD for car. So what's going to happen when I run this first table request? Well, I'm going to get no data found for file car. There's no physical file allocated for car. not until we do the use. And then now the data is going to come from the sync machine. And now I get my 5 records output. To stop the sync, we have an HLIKX where you specify the step lib. So it's the same foclib.load that you used when you started the sync and the same focsu that's being used on that sync. So when you run it, then it will kill the started task or the job that's running that's doing the SU work. Now, note, do not just cancel the SU job. Don't go to your job monitor and put a C in front of it because it could corrupt your focus databases. Because you don't know if somebody's in the middle of doing an update. And if you cancel it, it might be in the middle of the update when you canceled it. Issuing the HLIKX will make sure that all pending updates are done before shutting down the job. All right, and that's all I had. Any questions on the subsystem? Any questions on the sync machines? All right, I don't have anything else. Again, next session is February is December 13th. Hopefully we'll see you there. Thanks for coming and